Hi friends, welcome back to my channel and welcome to 2023. So in today's video we will be talking about all of the things that I read in December. There are some things that I have open-ended that'll probably wrap up in January's wrap up in February, but they were books that I read for a decent chunk of December, aka like the latter half. So if you are new here, the way that I do my wrap-ups is I talk about all of the books that I read outside of a themed reading vlog. I do a monthly reading vlog, but I will wrap up those books as well, just in case you're not like a super big regular reading vlog sort of person. If you want to see all of the things that I read in December, I would recommend checking out the videos down in my description. So last month was Vlogmas. I did a majority of my reading slash filming in the earlier months of the year. So I didn't read a whole bunch of those books in December, but I did read the Blood and Ash series and I read the After series. So if you're interested in my thoughts, I recommend checking out those videos, but I did read those in December. The first thing that I read in December was An Unwanted Guest. This is a locked door murder mystery about a group of people who go and stay at a cabin. They get snowed in at the cabin and people start dying, and it has to be a limited number of people. I absolutely love mysteries like this. I love closed door mysteries, very claustrophobic mysteries. I don't particularly love like the thrillers that are like this, but mysteries to me are so fun. And it's delightful how the author wove all of the characters together and the connections together to the point where I didn't even really see the connection coming. I was trying to like think of how the characters might be connected and who was doing the killings. And when it was revealed, I was like, that was smart. So I definitely am interested to read more by this author. I don't know if she does typical mysteries or if she does like thrillers. I'm not really sure what her backlist looks like, but I definitely would read more mysteries from her. So then I read The Appeal. This month was definitely a focus on mysteries and historical romances for me, just because my reading for the last year has been so scheduled based on videos that I'm filming that December, outside of Vlogmas content, was really focused on books that I had wanted to read in the year or books that I was excited to get to that I just hadn't gotten the chance to yet. So I focused a lot on mysteries because this year I have just become kind of obsessed with mysteries. It's not a genre that I like readily explored, but I watched Knives Out, I watched Glass Onion, so like I just became obsessed with mysteries. And I read And Then There Were None a couple of years ago and absolutely loved it. So I definitely have become, I've fallen in love with the mystery genre. Mysteries in particular, not like thrillers, but I just like the like slow, methodical pacing, maybe a little bit of claustrophobia. So back to The Appeal. A mystery, we don't have a body, we don't know the crime in the beginning of the story, but it's told entirely through emails, and it follows this group of theater troupe members as they are putting together a fundraiser for their leader's grandchild who has cancer. And they are trying to get this, you know, controversial medicine approved by the UK so that they can administer it to her and hopefully cure her cancer. So we start off the book not really knowing what the crime is, and you're sort of just reading the emails amongst the theater troops as the events leading up to the crime happen and then the emails after the crime. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. It was almost a perfect mystery for me until the end. I think that the way that the emails work is so smart. It was so intelligently done because you don't know if everyone is being genuine. You kind of have to read between the lines and find out what's happening. These people could be faking, like these could be fake emails. This could not even be real people, and not everybody is being honest in their emails. And there's plots within plots. There are motives for every single person to do what ultimately happened, and it's very, very well done. I will say, like, if I was more versed in murder mystery, I might have been not as entranced in it as I was, which is something that I've heard from like avid mystery readers, but I absolutely loved it. I would be so excited to read this author's next works, which I think is done through voicemails or something like that, or like audio messages of some sort, and I would love to read it because I thought this was just ingenious. So next up we have The Broken Girls. This is the second book by this author that I have read. The first one was The Sundown Motel. This, I believe I gave 4 or 5 stars at the time that I read this. Again, another delightful mystery story with very slight like magical elements to it. So I went into The Broken Girls pretty excited, and then this author has another mystery that I want to read as well. The Broken Girls is about it's told in two different timelines, and it all centers around this girl's school. So we have a present day timeline in which our main character is investigating the rebuilding of the school, and her sister was actually murdered on the premises of the school. She was left in the 90s out in a field, and they presume that it was the boyfriend because he just didn't really have like a good alibi, and he is now in prison. But the town basically believes that he was innocent, or there are people in the town that are influential that believe he's innocent. And one day she is out on the road because this case with her sister has just really stuck in her craw. She doesn't understand how it happened, why it happened, the like specifics around it. She's just kind of obsessed with the case. And so she goes out to the area where her sister's body was found, and it is on the premises of this girls' school that I believe was shut down in like the 70s or 80s, so before her sister was murdered. And she notices a sign on the premises of the school that says that it has been purchased and that they are going to be doing renovations. She is a freelance journalist, and she goes to a paper that she works with, and asks if she can do a piece on the school. So she starts investigating the school. She works with the people that bought the property, and while they're doing a walkthrough of the property, they discover a dead body of a girl that went to the school, presumably back, you know, before it was shut down. So she's investigating the school, the girls, and all of that. And then we have the past timeline, where we're getting snippets of girls' points of view that went to the school, including the girl that was murdered and like her friends and all of that kind of stuff. And there is a slight paranormal element because it's kind of believed that this school is haunted, and there is a lady, I think she's called something along the lines of like the Lady in White or something like that, but she is said to have she lived on the property with her family before it was like, you know, the school was built, and she like supposedly lost her child, and she haunts the school, I guess, in retaliation for the loss of her child. And so that's like the slight paranormal element. And so we get the overlap of those two timelines. And I did end up giving this 3 stars. It was definitely a disappointment for me. And really the disappointment came in the latter half of the book. For the first portion of the book, I was all in. And unfortunately, the latter half just really didn't have the same like pace and interest and intrigue that the first half had. And I think the ending was really unsatisfactory. It just petered off. I did not like the ending, and like the paranormal elements, which is what a lot of people have issues with her books, didn't bother me because there's always sort of like an ambiguity around the paranormal elements. I didn't have an issue with that. I had an issue with the way that everything wrapped up. The mystery with her sister, the mystery around the girl, and like all of it. I just was not a fan of it, the way it wrapped up. So then I read A Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking. This is a pretty short book. It's a little under 200 pages, and it essentially covers everything. So I believe the tagline is the exotic realms of black holes and quarks, of antimatter, matter and arrows of time, of the Big Bang and a bigger God, where the possibilities are wondrous and unexpected. So this is the 1970s version of sort of his recap of theories of space and quantum mechanics and the search for quantum theory to sort of encapsulate all of the ideas around space and time and all of that stuff. It's been edited since, I think it was edited in 2007. just to update some theories and questions that he raised that have since been answered since this was published. But this is by no means the most up-to-date. I really just wanted a place to start with quantum mechanics and space-time and theory and all of that, and like string theory in particular, because string theory is just odd to me. So I really picked this up because I want a jumping off point to get to the bigger ideas of space-time and things like that. And as you can see, I had a lot of thoughts. I really enjoyed a lot. Okay, things look different. I'm sorry, my camera died. But there was definitely a lot of parts of this that I enjoyed, that I found really accessible, particularly around black holes. But there was also elements of this that I just didn't really get. Like, I'm not really a big science fan, you know, prior to delving into this. So there was a lot that I didn't really understand, like the movement of particles and the spin of particles and what happens when they run into each other and when they combine and like the dense, like all of it. But I would say, like, if you have any amount of understanding of these things, like, you could pick this up and read it. It's most of it, I would say, is really, really accessible. And I've just found it interesting to see, you know, his thoughts on space and time and the theories of past and how science has evolved, and also exploring time travel and what that would look like, and black holes and the future of our universe and things like that. So it was interesting. I obviously didn't rate it because I don't generally rate nonfiction, but I enjoyed my time. Next up, I read Letters to a Young Poet, and this is letters from Rilke, who was a German poet, to another young man who was a soldier who wanted to become an artist. And it starts off with this soldier sending him letters with his works in it and asking him, like, do you think I am good enough to be published? And then it delves into kind of Rilke's like passions and love and thoughts about relationships and the world and fate and grief and all of those things. I, again, did not rate this because this is, again, nonfiction, and I don't know how to rate people's like thoughts, but there were definitely parts of this that I wanted to bang my head against the wall because it was so inaccessible, and there were other parts that I absolutely loved. There is a letter in particular about grief that is several pages long, and it was stunning. The things that he talks about were just very profound, very thoughts that I could never put into words, and just beautiful. And again, other parts of it were not my favorite, not very accessible, and I probably would have to go back and read and just like really dedicate every brain cell that I have to understanding exactly what he is saying, because it is quite dense. So then I read The Laws of the Skies. This is a horror book, and it is compared to Winnie the Pooh and Lord of the Flies. I picked this up because I had heard Jordaline Reeds talk about this, and that tagline of Winnie the Pooh and Lord of the Flies, or whatever the comparison is just so wild to me that I had to know what this was about. So this is about a group of 6-year-olds who are going on a camping trip with their school, with their class, and one of their classmates starts murdering the kids. And you are reading predominantly from the kids' points of view, and they're dying in various gruesome ways. I didn't rate this because I don't quite know how I feel about it. I did feel like the writing was simple, and not in that it was trying to exemplify like a child's brain. It just felt very disjointed. The point of view changes were hard to follow. Overall, I just didn't really enjoy my time with it. It's pretty short. I think it's only like maybe 120, 130 pages. So there's not too much meat for me to dive into or to talk about, or rip apart rather, but it just wasn't my favorite. So next up, I read The Darling and the Duke. This is the final book in the Bare Knuckle Bastard series, and this whole series is about a group of children who were raised by a duke to eventually take over the dukedom. But the way that he was going to figure out who deserved the dukedom was to make them fight and make them undergo torture, essentially, and fight each other. And we are now, like, I think 15 years in the future, and the two of the brothers and the sister are Bare Knuckle Bastards. They are running like a criminal enterprise in the poorer section of London, and they are sort of like the caretakers for the poor people of London. And Ewan, the hero of this book, has come back into their lives, and he believed at the beginning of this series and at the beginning of this book, he believes that Grace, who's the heroine, is dead. And this sort of sends him into a frenzy where he kills a lot of people. Incidentally, he doesn't really like think about it, and he destroys a lot of property, and he kind of takes his revenge out on the other heroes and their wives. And then he realizes in the beginning of this book that Grace is alive, and this is basically them rekindling their childhood romance in addition to repairing the relationships like amongst the brothers and Grace, and wrapping up the rest of the series. I ended up giving this 5 stars because I loved the way that this series wrapped up. I love the relationships in this series, and this one might be my favorite because this feels like true equals. I love the heroes in the other books, but the relationships themselves are great. Like, I think I've given all of them 5 stars, but they're never, the relationships just aren't on the level that this one is. I think they're absolute true equals. Ewan is completely obsessed with Grace, and he thinks she is a goddess. He thinks that she deserves to be worshipped and that she is an equal to him in every way. There is no, like, I'm gonna protect you from the world sort of thing. Like, he acknowledges that she is strong and can protect herself and just wants to be by her side. And I like the way that the series wrapped up. I think this focused a lot more on their relationship than it did on the series, which I'm not, like, mad at. I do think some of the ways, I do think some of the reunion between the brothers was a little rushed, and I would have liked a little more work there. But we do get a 1-year skip in this book in which Ewan is sort of, I guess, atoning for his sins and becoming a better man and getting over or working on the things that were troubling him. And I wish that we had seen that as well, because when he comes back, the brothers just kind of accept him, and they're like, well, if Grace will accept you, then we'll accept you, sort of thing. Because the thing that broke them apart initially was something that really affected Grace most of all. So I do enjoy the focus on, like, them rekindling their relationship and how the series wrapped up. Just minor issues that I have, but overall I think the series is fantastic, and in particular this one was great. Alright, so next up I read When Beauty Tamed the Beast. I have read one other Eloisa James, and I rated it quite highly, but I don't remember what it was or what it was about or what I liked about it. This one was really hard for me. So this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and the heroine is going to be married off. She doesn't really want to be married, and she's going to be married to the Duke, the hero. He is a scarred hero who is he's a doctor, and he runs a hospital out of his house, out of his estate. She gets sent to his estate to marry him after she is scandalized because she wears a dress that makes her look pregnant. So of course she gets ruined, and his father basically says, like, I've always wanted a child, believing that she is pregnant, she's not. So let her marry my son. We don't really care that she's pregnant. So she goes and stays with him, and it's pretty quickly agreed upon that they're not actually going to marry, but they have a good bantery relationship. They enjoy each other's company, and then of course the feelings go from there. The heroine in this was insufferable. She had this, like, air about her, that everybody else kind of collaborated, that she was like the most beautiful thing to ever exist. Every man was obsessed and in love with her, but also she was like so intelligent and so much more intelligent than everybody else, and she like touted herself as being gorgeous. The first line of the book is something along the lines of like, I'm way more beautiful than all the other girls in society or something like that, and like that very much carries throughout the rest of the book. And I just don't like the way she was characterized. It's a lot of repetitive scenes over and over again of them like bantering back and forth and hanging out and having fun and telling the same jokes all over again. The reason this didn't get a 2-star is because there is like a 10-page long caretaking scene from the hero to the heroine. That was just like the best caretaking scene I've ever read, and it like made me tear up a little bit. It was truly an amazing scene that like bumped the book up a whole star, but honestly without it I would have given this 2 stars. So next up, I read Her Wicked Marquess, which is the second book in the Sinful Wallflowers series, and this is about Marion, who is the leader of the Sinful Wallflowers, and it's a group of women who are wallflowers, who've been deemed wallflowers, and their purpose is to build each other up towards whatever dream the individual is holding. So the heroine in this one never wants to get married. She wants to become a spinster and sort of live with the freedom that spinsters have. And in this one, she is going to be forced to get married to this man who's older than her and doesn't seem like the best guy. So she has a plan to ruin herself using Nicholas, who is the hero. And in the beginning of the book, here Nicholas sees her playing a prank on these other women, and he immediately becomes intrigued with her, and they have this relationship, this bantery relationship, where she's very quick-witted and meets him, you know, halfway, and he is just enamored with her, and they have this relationship where they are just flirting, and they meet each other up in secret, and Nicholas is in society to get revenge for a crime that was committed against his friend that ultimately led to her suicide. It was a woman that he was in love with in his youth, and he's now trying to get revenge, and it was delightful. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I will pop some screenshots of some quotes from this book, because I am not one to like really heavily highlight my books, like Kindle books, but I think I highlight over 30 quotes, and I mean like paragraphs, and that's not really something I do. The conversations that they had and the thoughts that this man had for her were just absolutely stunning. Their relationship, again, is another one of real equals where he is just completely gone for her, and I loved it was honestly sort of a meandering plot where she's trying to figure out how to get herself ruined, and he's trying to figure out this like criminal element, this revenge element, and it just really, really worked. I think their relationship building was so strong and their character work was so strong that despite the plot being a little bit more repetitive, where it didn't work in When Beauty Tamed the Beast, it really worked here. So I'm very happy with the second book. I didn't much like the first book in the series. Like, I think I gave it 4 stars, but it's not really that memorable to me, and this is one that I loved. 5 stars. Next up is The Devil in Her Bed, which is the 3rd and final book in the Devil You Know series. I gave the first book in this series, 10 Ways to Love a Duke or something like that, 5 stars. Second one, 2 stars. Hated it. This one, I unfortunately gave 3 stars. So, this was kind of the anticipated book romance in the series, because the overall premise of this series is that there are 3 women they're called the Red Rogues, and they all have secrets. And they're the best of friends, and they help each other with whatever they need. They cover up crimes, stuff like that. And the secret of the heroine in this one is she assumed the identity of a girl who was the duchess of a family that her family worked for when she was a child. The entire family and her family get slaughtered when she is, I think, 10. It's focused on her getting revenge on the people that slaughtered her family. And to do so, she had to assume the identity of Pippa, who is the young girl, and to like become, you know, a member of society and someone that will be allowed in, you know, whatever room she tries to be in. Because she was a servant's daughter, so originally, so presumably they're not going to let her into, you know, these high society rooms. And she ends up meeting Nicholas, who is Pierce. His name is Pierce. Pierce, who is it Pierce? I can't remember what the hero's name is. Who is related to her past in some way. He's part of like a secret government agency, basically. He's a spy, and he sees her and thinks that she is the real Pippa. He immediately reveals his identity to her, so the entirety of the book, she knows who he is. He is a childhood friend that she had a crush on, who she believed died. They enter into a reluctant friendship / romantic relationship. He's attempting to help her get her revenge, and I was loving this book for a good portion of it until I realized that the conflict was going to be her hidden identity, and I don't like that. There are definitely instances of hidden identity that I can enjoy. One of my favorite books this year, and another one of my all-time favorite books, Punk 57 and The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy, the secret identity is used as a way to bolster the relationship, to make the relationship better, and to reveal to each other their deepest secrets without having the vulnerability of like doing it with someone that you know or doing it face to face. In this, she just didn't tell him who she really was, and the issue is that he was in love with Pippa, the real Pippa, when they were children. So he has this past with her that has influenced the way that their relationship goes and how he views her. And despite her being a different person in the present, even from who she was as a child, you can't lie about your past. You can't lie about your past with the person that you're in a relationship with or going to be in a relationship with. Because again, that changes the way that they view you and the way that your relationship looks. And that being the central conflict was a book ruiner for me. I didn't like the way that it went. I didn't like the way that it was handled. I don't like it as a trope in general, unless it's like particular instances. A trope handled like this. So unfortunately, this was just a huge letdown for me because I was very excited to get to her story, and I love Kerrigan Byrne. I've read a lot of books by her that I have, you know, that I would consider favorites of all time, so it was a huge disappointment. I listened to the audiobook for Becoming. This is Michelle Obama's memoir. Didn't rate it again because I don't rate nonfiction. This basically chronicles her life from childhood to after her husband leaves office. I really enjoyed reading about her as a child and her efforts, her and Barack's relationship, in addition to their efforts separately and together to better their community in Chicago. But I didn't enjoy the story once it became about his presidency and campaigning and all of that. It's just not something that is particularly interesting to me. And even though the story didn't focus on his presidency like in particular, it focused on the impact on her life and like it through the lens of motherhood and their family dynamics and things like that. It just wasn't interesting to me. I didn't want to read about campaigning and stuff. Like, I guess I should have seen that coming, but it just, I didn't anticipate that I would not like it like I did. It just wasn't something that I was riveted by. But I enjoyed the rest of it. I think she's an interesting woman and her passion to help her community is fantastic. So I then read some graphic novels that I'm just going to kind of speed through real quick because I didn't really have any strong thoughts about any of them. I read 10 Days in a Madhouse. This is the adaptation, the graphic novel adaptation of the real story of Nellie Bly, who is a journalist who was enlisted to go into a, I think it's called Blackwell or Rockwell. It is a asylum where women were sent. When she got out, she reported the abuse that women in this sort of facility were experiencing, women who weren't even necessarily mentally ill. They were just poor, or their husbands didn't want to deal with them anymore. They were sent to these facilities where they were then abused, starved, beaten, forced to do hard labor, chained up. It was a good adaptation in my opinion. I then read Nightcry, which is a comic about a girl who summons a witch with the intention of getting a wish, and she doesn't know what her wish would be, so she just befriends the witch and then they go through life together. I love the art style, but it was just fine. We then have Cruel Summer, which is like a crime comic series, and it follows two points of view: a father who is a criminal and he's planning a heist with his this woman that he's obsessed with, and then his son who gets embroiled in the scheme. Fantastic art style, love the art style. It's very like new age punky, but I just didn't really enjoy the story. Criminal stories just aren't super interesting. I then read Just Peachy, comics about depression, anxiety, love, and finding the humor in being sad, and Wired Up Wrong. These are both like graphic memoirs about the author's experiences with depression, anxiety, you know, all life's things. And I would more compare this to like Instagrammable little graphics that you would find like on their feed. They're not super in-depth. They're just like little relatable vignettes of like little funny moments or quotes or, you know, whatever. So if you're into that sort of thing, check it out. And then the last thing that I finished was my reread of Chain of Gold. I'm not gonna pull it down, but we all know what Chain of Gold looks like. Reread. I actually have a dedicated reading vlog for this. My feelings around it haven't really changed. Just my obsession with James and Cordelia has increased a little bit, but it's still a 5 stars, still fantastic. I don't know which one I like more, the first one or the second one. Hopefully the third one comes out and it just like resolves that issue for me. But yeah, still 5 stars, still great. Excited for the third one in January. So those are all of the things that I read in December. I talked for quite a while. I would love to know what you read in December down below, or your thoughts on anything that I read. If you don't have anything to say, leave a cat emoji down in the comments. If you're looking for more content from me, make sure you check out my Instagram and my podcast Instagram. You can also check out my podcast on all your favorite streaming platforms. We are currently on a hiatus, but we hope to be back soon. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in my next one.